Okay, good evening, colleagues. Really delighted to welcome you to the NCE Live Podcast, Season 4. And I'm delighted to be joined by a personal friend and mentor, an absolute legend of the coaching and leadership world, Agnes Cserhati. And Agnes, I really appreciate you joining us. Because I know you're an hour ahead or 2 hours ahead, aren't you, in Bonn? So thank you for staying up late to talk to us. For those of you that don't know Agnes, Agnes is an internationally recognized speaker, trainer, consultant, and a qualified coach with a mere 25 years odd of experience in public and private sector. Agnes is regularly featured in Forbes, often in the BBC and The Guardian, and she's dedicated her career to making people and organizations successful. And I know Agnes has a real passion around simplifying things that are very complex into much more manageable bite-sized pieces. She's a trusted advisor and coach to many senior leaders worldwide, including school leaders here in the UK and trust CEOs in the UK. And I know has a real passion for education. Agnes, welcome. I can't believe it's been 2 years since we last did that. How the world has changed.
Absolutely. May I just say very warm welcome, everybody. It is a fantastic privilege. I was here. When I say I was here, I was literally here, sitting in this chair, talking to Nick, and perhaps some people also still in the audience, 2020 September, I think.
Yeah, the world was a very different place there. So let's get going, because I know we want to focus on resilience, and I think the school leaders and school teachers in the UK and worldwide, are masters and resilience. But what we'd like to do is just spend some time unpacking that and how we can make sure or raise a spotlight on helping them be more resilient. And I know we've talked lots, and you always mention that education has a special place in your heart. Can you just expand on that for us and why you're so passionate about joining, a load of teachers on a Thursday night when you could be doing glamorous and exotic things in Bonn?
Absolutely. Well, there is no two-way saying this. Education has saved my life, and I'm tremendously grateful for it. In a nutshell, I was one of those children who perhaps haven't had a mollycoddled or even nurtured childhood. So education meant everything to me. Education meant that I could develop some confidence, perhaps. I could develop that resilience that was required for me to be outside school and be outside education. So I have a huge respect, a tremendous respect for anybody who works in education. And I strongly believe that, goodness me, don't they deserve the opportunity to grow and develop? And I'm not going to stop this. I'm truly, truly genuine. And you know this better than I, that I'm truly, genuinely passionate about it. So thank you for being here tonight as well and listening.
Oh, brilliant! Thank you. And so, but let's get right into the meat of what we're going to talk about. So, resilience. I know it's something that we often talk about, and we ask. We certainly expect our young people and our children to be resilient, but it's not something that we find naturally easy to focus on as adults, and certainly not as teachers and leaders in schools. So can we just unpack that and just spend a few minutes just decoding that? Because absolutely, given the pressures and the enormity of what's going on in schools still currently here, I think it would be worth just being really clear on what we're talking about.
Absolutely. And by the way, in the meantime, if anybody has questions or you think, what are these two talking about? I want to ask this specific thing, then I think please put into the chat and Nick will put it to me when the time comes. So if I may start with things that actually what resilience is not. Because it's such a misunderstood topic, and you probably hear me going on about it all the time, but I find it so important, because resilience is not about being tough. Resilience is not about not feeling. Resilience is not about not being down, sad, and all of these. But resilience is about how quickly, so it's about that recovery time. How quickly do you recover? Do you move forward after an event? It doesn't have to be an event. After an event, an occurrence that perhaps happened to you that was not as you expected. And this is really important to say, because very often when I talk to leaders, when senior leaders with many, 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 many years of experience, they say to me, Agnes, you know what? I'm not that resilient. So I'm asking them, how do you know? And they say to me, because I'm not that tough. And I said, I'm glad you said that, because this is really, really important to not to mix up. Also, this, feeling negative. There are no negative or positive feelings. There are only feelings. So this is step one. I think that's important. Step two, and this is the good news, by the way. The step two is a really good news, because resilience can be developed. Nobody, not that I know of, born naturally with resilience. Resilience develops through experience. Now, don't think that we have to go through life-changing or traumatic experience to develop our resilience. It's simply, how do we deal with things that perhaps were not as we expected, and how quickly do we move forward? What do I mean by that? If I have a meeting in the morning and that goes terribly, not perhaps how I expected, does it affect my next meeting? Does it affect lunchtime or even the next days or weeks? So how quickly can I come back to this optimum performance, whatever that is? And the third point that I really, really want to highlight, and this is the least probably important, or at least sort of often talked about topic on resilience, is that, of course, being successful. Positive events, when they happen to you, sudden success requires resilience. We often talk about recovering from negative events, but actually, when sudden success or unexpected success happens to us, we require resilience to actually carry forward and working with it. This is why I work with some Olympic sports people, and this is why the second Olympic gold is much more difficult than the first Olympic gold. And so this is very important. So it's not about being tough. It's a resilience muscle, I would say, exercise or resilience muscle. And it is not about negative events only. It's all about, how much we expected this to happen to us and how can we move forward.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So I'm really interested in your definition around feelings, because some of my reading, and I know colleagues that are with us as learners will be reading furiously around leadership and the key texts that we provide as part of the program. But one of my readings was very much around understanding the permissions that we allow ourselves to feel or not feel, and actually giving ourselves permission to feel in certain things at certain times, but also to not feel things at certain times because we may feel obliged to. So can we just unpack that, because that's really important, I think, particularly in terms of the uncertainty, and for colleagues that are looking for a good read, Margaret Heffinan's book on Uncharted, on uncertainty and the folly in trying to plan for uncertainty and being comfortable with being uncomfortable and the fact that you can't. I think if we can manage how we allow things to feel, then that's maybe a really nice starting point to building one's resilience and being aware of the limitations of feelings and the cripplingness of feelings if we give them that permission. Does that make sense?
That's absolutely, and I'm thank you for bringing that up, because I often say to people, don't believe all your feelings or your thoughts. Now, I don't mean by that you completely thinking it wrongly, but it can feel, something can feel overwhelming. A negative emotion can feel very overwhelming. It doesn't mean the entire day or year will be that. So acknowledging, I think what you have highlighted, acknowledging, the sooner you acknowledge, and not only acknowledge, that will not help us move forward in resilience. Actually accept. Now, acceptance. Without acceptance, we're not moving forward as fast. Now, the minute you acknowledge that perhaps, I'm feeling very uncomfortable. I'm outside. By the way, resilience lives outside the comfort zone. Now, and I think since 2020 and now, I think most of you have been most of the time outside the comfort zones. It's relentless. So that's why it's so important. How do I go through this cycle? So I accept it, name it. It's noting. There is a technique called noting. Noting doesn't mean physical noting. You can, if you like. You can write them down, but also noting and acknowledging that, I'm not feeling so motivated about this topic. And it's perfectly okay. It doesn't mean that I'm not motivated about this topic, therefore I'm not going to be good at it, therefore I'm not going to. So the judgment doesn't start. Because of course our thinking drives our emotions and drive our actions. And if we want to change the way we behave, the way we feel, we need to change our thinking. So challenge yourself. What am I thinking when I'm feeling like this? Is this realistic? Is this, yes, it may seem very serious right now, and maybe it doesn't feel comfortable. But the judgment is a critical part. And the story that we tell ourselves is the most important story. So that is why I'm so passionate about that. I hope that helped a little bit on that.
Oh, Agnes, I'll tell you what, you've poked the bear there. So,
go on.
Right. Okay. So I absolutely agree with you. And in my mind, I'm one of the techniques I use is a red to blue technique around actually taking time for my own resilience. And I draw 3 circles on a piece of paper, and I have the things that I can't control in one circle, the things I can control in another circle, and the things I can influence. And anything I can't control, I tune out because I can't do anything about it. But what I can do is manage the things that I can control and the things that I can influence. And it was a real, it was in becoming a coach, a gazing coach, a red to blue coach, that, learning that mental discipline around things. And that's not to say that I'm not interested or bothered by things I can't control, and doesn't mean that I don't want to influence to try and do positive things with them. But actually, if I can't do anything about it, any energy I invest in it is very negative. And actually then it's a fool's errand, because I can't change it. It's not within my gift to control it. And so if I focus on the bits that I can control and I can influence, I have a much more positive outlook.
Wow. Well, you should see what I have in front of me. I live with it's called a circle of control, and I live with it. If I'm in a moment when I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know. So hold on, Agnes. 3 little circles. I do it all the time, just like an onion diagram. One in the middle, then one around it, the other. It's not complex. It's the circle of control. You can look it up. There are different other names existing. Why is it so important? Because when you're noticing, this is about self-observation. So when you're noticing that you're spending most of your time in the outer layer called the concern zone, which you should know about, but I can't control it. I think in Corona, we could see that a lot of the times, oh my God, this regulation, that regulation, this number, that number, It's good to be aware of it, but if I notice that I'm spending a lot of time on that outer zone, then stop and pause. And I think I don't know if you've seen it today, but I do check it. I'm very often share things on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. If you're in the audience, I shared one of the quotes today that I really like. Is the best way to navigate stress and uncertainty is to develop our ability to choose one thought over another. And this is this ability that we are developing, one thought over another. This is what is critical.
So that's led me lovely into your statement around we control the thoughts and the stories we tell ourselves. But I would suggest that a caveat to that would be that the biggest lies are the ones we whisper to ourselves.
Oh, absolutely.
And so it's about managing those 2 permissions. It's unlikely that I'm going to be asked to be George Clooney's body double in any film soon. But I keep telling myself that story every day, which is why I've attempted to grow a beard and whatever else. But it works. So it's about making sure that we're focusing on the right things, isn't it? and the measured things, but also being mindful of the whispers, the lies that we whisper to ourselves.
Exactly, and that kind of whisper that's why I said that the most important story is the story that you tell yourself. And often this story, when I'm referring to this, it's also for the positive, no? But it's very often it's limiting beliefs. It's stories that we heard. I spoke to recently to a very what one you would say a very successful senior leader at a large bank in the UK, and we started working together as a sort of coach-coachee relationship. And he said, is there anything that I often ask? Is there anything that I need to know about you before we start working together? And you know what he said? And the gentleman is mid-50s, extremely successful, whatever. You have whatever it takes. He says, Agnes, you need to know I'm not good at maths. And I said to him, and who said this to you? He said, my year 2 teacher. And I said, and you still telling this story? It was so important to him. He internalized this. So the question is, what stories do we internalize? Stories come from us. Stories come from others. Now, maybe he was not good in maths in year 2. That could be true. But certainly, is that now so important that the first time he meets the coach, this is the thing that you need to know, kind of saying, you know what, I'm not as good as it. There are sort of things about me. So it's very important to understand and perhaps write it down or maybe make it a little go. What kind of stories do I tell myself?
And you know what? That's even, it's almost like we know what we're doing, because that leads into another book recommendation.
Which we are, don't we? We do know what we do.
I keep telling myself that, Agnes, honestly, but I think you know more than I do. But it's Dr. Tim O'Brien. You'll find him, I think it's Dr. Tim on Twitter. His book, Inner Story, was a real revelation for me in enabling and giving myself permission to feel the things I was feeling without the responsibility, the guilt, and the associated baggage. And I'll put it in the chat for you in a sec. But we've talked briefly around the circles of influence as a strategy. If we were going to build out, say, resilience toolkit for leaders, teachers, and colleagues listening, where we've got the circles of influence, we can do that. Where would we go next?
I'll tell you. So I have been working with leaders for many, many years and in different industries. And you may think, we in education, we're very different to perhaps I work a lot with United Nations, with all sorts of different, even just last year, I worked in 120 different countries. But let me tell you, the challenges in leadership and challenges also to be resilient are very same because we're all human. So I have developed, and I do have an article about it. So I can send it. We didn't talk about this before, but I'm very happy to share it with you, Nick, and you can then send it to your audience or to your students as well, because I've developed a so-called 5+1 model. Now, why is it, often I ask, why is it not 6? Well, it's 5+1 for a reason, because +1 is about leading self. Because if you can't lead self, we don't spend enough time leading self. It's very difficult to lead others. If we can't learn how to be resilient, where focus goes, energy flows. So nobody has endless energy. So my top tip out of all, this +1 is be kind to self. And I mean it. And don't just drop this, oh yes, she said be kind to self. No, I'm going to ask you and challenge you. Just think quietly to yourself, how are you actually kind to yourself? And when was the last time you were kind to self? It's really, really important. The other thing is that you will make mistakes. Nobody is perfect. We love to do, honestly, I'd love to do my utter best and not to make, but you will make mistakes. So please, be kind to yourself. You human. The circumstance, the situation, the uncertainty that you're going through requires it. Uncertainty is a little bit like, if you're doing yoga and everything starts moving around the room. What do? I can't hold myself in a sort of, tree position or whatever you want, where you focus on a fixed point. And in extreme uncertainty that I think we had, or complexity or whatever you want to call it. The focus is self. If you have yourself, you have a lot. So that's the first point. The other one is deliberate calm and optimism. Now, when I say deliberate, I'm not saying faking, but I'm saying that be mindful that people are looking at you. So when you are, whether you're leader, whether you're teacher, whether you, even just your colleague. So it's not about not sharing emotions. It's not about, being unauthentic, but be aware of it that people are looking at you. So do that sense check, because when you're a leader, you're leading, you have a lot in your head. Not everybody knows what's in your head. They're watching at you exiting from your office and you look stressed. They think, oh, it's bad news. It may not be. You may just had a really bad meeting about a totally different thing. So deliberate calm and optimism. The other one is demonstrating empathy. And demonstrating is the key word here. Because both empathy and gratitude are only good if you demonstrate. It's not good for me to say, oh, I'm really empathetic, but I'm not showing it to you. And one thing I'd like to highlight here is that cognitive empathy is good enough. What I mean by that is, if you every day working with others, if you're leading others, if you continuously, every time, all the time show compassionate or emotional empathy, and you feel how others feel, you're gonna be burnt out. It's not about not being kind. It's about being kind to self and having healthy boundaries. So understanding where others come from, understanding how they might feel, but not at all times. Sometimes it's necessary, but not at all times going the same way. And then few more quick one. The higher you go, the lonelier it gets. So it doesn't have to be. Make your network your team. And network doesn't mean your colleagues necessarily in your school, doesn't mean teachers. It's people who perhaps work in leadership positions or work in totally different positions. But I think just sharing, just feeling that I'm not alone, that is so, so important in these times as well. Now, the other thing that I have two more things here is decision making. It's a time of decision making, and in uncertain, that's probably the biggest, most difficult point. And here I would say, treat it like crossing the road. Well, in the UK, you're looking the other way. Here we look the left, you look the right. But never mind, look around, check, but then cross. So it's anticipate and then move. It won't be the perfect decision at all times because we don't know everything. We don't have all the information, but make that step. And last is communicate. Why? Because when silence is, people feel silence with their own stories, coming back from story to story. So even if you don't have an outcome, don't have news, don't have a tip, don't have the perfect answer, communicate that I don't know. It's okay. It's also okay to say, how can somebody ask me the other day, how can you say in a nice way no? I say you can say not now or not yet. But say something. Say I'm working on it. Don't just think you have to communicate with her. So this is the 5+1. So if you've written it down, it's probably 6-7 points and lots here. But some kind of tips there. There is a guidance, and all of it is aimed at looking after yourself. It's preserving that core so that you can build and create that resilience that is required.
Brilliant. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I think just playing back there, the one key thought that I think was totally enlightening for me on my own leadership journey was being brave enough to say I haven't got a clue. And do you know what? This is you have to be careful how I phrase this. I say that more and more now because I'm surrounded with brilliant people that I'm really, really excited to resource and work with to know more than me. And for me not to have the pressure of having to know or have answers and say, look, I'm really not sure. What do you think? Tell me what you see. How could you think your way through that? I'm really interested in. And it's just such a great leadership tool that we're not told, or you're not necessarily taught, because we're Adam Grant recently, before Christmas, did a podcast on the High Performance podcast show with Damien Hughes and Jake Humphrey. And he said, we spend too much time trying to prove ourselves and not enough time trying to improve ourselves.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And you know what? I won't say every leadership book, but I think in most leadership courses, books and everything, how to be this perfect leader, to know the answer and knowledgeable and expert. I think leaders don't ask enough questions. But to ask questions, you need confidence. And may I just say, Nick, something? It's not just your bright colleagues who I have had, by the way, the wonderful privilege to meet today. And also thank you very much, because there are people working behind the scenes while we are sharing our expertise here. I think that's also important to say. But it's also that if you are in psychological safety, if you feel safe, if you feel confident, you can say, do you know what? I don't know. And that is so. Now, if you say that for everything, every time, one is probably in the wrong job. But we're talking about that important time. And the other day, I have a teenage son. And the other day he asked me something. And normally I have to say, I do know the answer. This time I didn't. So I said, I don't know. He said, what do you mean you don't know? And I said, because I don't know everything. And he says, really? And it really shocked me, the expectation. And I think we can create this expectation without the willingness in our team, in our department, that, Nick should know everything, Agnes should know everything. So I think we play part in this. We have an important role. Teachers also in the classroom, yes, you should be subject experts. Yes, I agree. And when I was teaching, I used to teach a college for a period of time, sixth form college in Surrey. Of course, I should know my subject. But you know what? The rare occasion when I said to the student about a case study or a company that perhaps I wasn't sure, I said, you know what? I'm not sure of the answer. I'm going to look it up and I'm going to tell you tomorrow. I think that created probably the biggest respect versus just dishing out some random answer.
No, brilliant. Thank you. And the other thought I want to pick up, and I think this will probably lead us into your we can explore the your leadership in a circle work, is the importance of your network and surrounding yourself with your network. And I know I will have colleagues on from our partnership. I'm really proud of our Women Ed partnership, and they're a massively collegiate group of colleagues, and the support for each other goes just is incredible and transcends now globally. But having a network that's outside of your direct workplace is really, really valuable. Now, whether you find that on LinkedIn, whether you find it on Twitter, whether you find it on, I don't know, other social media platforms that, I wouldn't know about, but it's having that network, or whether it's just somebody at the running club or whatever, is really, really valuable. And just to have that sample to bounce ideas off of and just to empathize with, isn't it? And that's so important. And if you haven't got that, I know that's something we try to do within the college with our NCE Journey hashtag. And so people will, it's great seeing messages come through. That's really, really important, isn't it? And finding that's really, really important.
Absolutely. I mean, I have been working with groups of people. If I don't name it, groups of people and individually, both as a coach, as a trainer as well. And what I have seen, I've had the privilege, not everybody has that, have had the privilege to see what a difference it is when you put a group together. A group that perhaps, may think, what's the common nominator here? Something totally different organizations, totally different background. One common aspect, leadership. And probably the same sort of career level in some ways, because of course the topics, the responsibility do have to have something common in that. And I have seen that in a sort of, I'm going to say smaller circle, extremely magical. And what was magical about is that the engagement. Of course, people joined because they thought they're going to learn from me, which hopefully is the case also. But I deliberately played the role of the professional catalyst. So I don't change the process, but I accelerate the process. So this is my motivation, behind running leadership inner circles for many, 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 many years and running mastermind groups for many years. Now, what probably the corona, the lockdown, the whatever has motivated or inspired me to do is to, rather than just go to an organization and bring together different organizations, actually offer this in a wider circuit for individuals can join into a leadership in a circle that I'm running. And it's not just about learning, and it's not just about the collective intelligence of those people, but a group. And I'm saying group, not a team, for a reason, because it starts as a group, eventually probably exits as a sort of team for the purpose. The group that learns together grows together. And the magic, if every single one of them were interviewed at the end, they will tell you that their biggest aha moment or their surprise, because we do ask them, of course, for feedback and review, is how they engaged with others, how they connected with this person from a total, I run it globally, with this person from, I don't know, from perhaps Afghanistan or Saudi or Sudan or from the continent in Europe or South America. And I thought, okay, I trust Agnes. I'm sure this is good, but what is it? But the amount that they have shared together, grow together, and they found a sounding board and have that mirror, and feel that they're not alone. And what I love about leadership in the circles is that it doesn't stop there. And I encourage people, I said, this doesn't stop here. When the program finishes, this doesn't stop here. This is your leadership in a circle. It's kind of catalyzed by me, but you can take it beyond, and you have this connection actually afterwards as well.
Brilliant. And this would be something that I'm thinking about school leaders here. We assume that you put a group of adults in a building and call it a school, and then throw some children in. That then makes a team. But that time together and mirroring and empathizing and listening. I love the saying, we've got 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. Is like a key tenet of the inner circle, isn't it? And so the leader or the organizer is then, facilitating that quite, psychologically safe conversation. And I think that once we get out of that improving versus proving mindset, we can then start to develop, one that's helping us build resilience, but then we can really start to develop some answers to maybe some of the questions that we have.
Absolutely. I mean, this can be done for a purpose. I've done it many times in UK schools as well. In fact, I'm running quite a few at the moment in some of the trusts, some trust-wide, some school-wide with senior leadership teams for a specific purpose. Now, so this can be run, for example, collaboration. I do that very often, not about learning to collaborate, but actually experiential learning. So we're actually collaborating on a topic that the school or the trust wants to work on in a format of leadership in a circle. So not only they engage, they connect, they increase the psychological safety, connection, and kind of understand and learn each other a little bit differently than perhaps even if they work together, but to find each other, but also to learn how to collaborate. And the next step is, it's not just about them learning to collaborate, but then they are sent out and they can lead collaboration, because leaders create leaders. And my very first point that I said, that education has saved my life, and I'm so passionate about, because I believe that the people in the audience, have the power to create leaders, to change life, change communities in a greater extent that you ever have imagined. And in this way, we can spread this out further. And that is why I'm so passionate about leadership inner circles.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. Now, Agnes, we've got about 10 minutes left. I'm just going to invite any questions from the colleagues that are on the podcast live with us. If there anything that you'd like to sort of unpack, pick up so far on what we've talked about, if you want to pop it in the chat box, and then we can have a rapid fire style response.
Absolutely. It can be about self-development, can be about leadership, anything really. I
Go
think the
go wild, yeah.
two of us will probably cover it in a way. So please fire
But
away.
Agnes, often when we talk about these, historically when we've done podcasts on these themes, it does leave colleagues thinking really hard. So you often don't get much back. But let's just see if there are any burning questions or anything you want to unpack. Whilst the colleagues having to think about that, let's just talk. Can we just go back on that? Resilience after success, because
Yes.
that for me is something that we often can experience in school, or often not. But how you then remotivate and be resilient after being successful.
Actually, to be able to, so what it happens is, imagine it's a little bit like a sudden success. No, that is what happens to, for example, very visibly, I know it's a television program, but very visibly you see talent shows. Somebody forever wanted to be on a stage. I forever wanted to get this leadership position. I forever wanted this student to do so well. Now we got it. And then suddenly go, oh, and then in order to move forward, we need resilience, actually. So it's not that the actual event was negative, but we've been hit in the same way because we unexpected it. So be aware of it, because sometimes you're very critical. They say, oh, well, this is all I wanted all my life. So why am I not succeeding? Why am I not pushing? Because I think many people forget and don't talk about this, that this is when you need to tap into your resilience. And not just sit there and wait and that's it, I achieved it, now what do I do with it? And that's why I'm talking about it, because I don't hear or see many people, because probably it's the less, can I say, sexy part of the topic. Everybody talks about unfortunate event. That attracts bigger media attention. But I think a lot of people succeed. A lot of people do very, very, very well. And what do you, when you achieved it, what do you do then? Well, when you switch on your resilience button.
Brilliant, thank you. Now, Christine's popped a question in the chat and has just asked, have you any tips for working under somebody who lacks empathy and is often pessimistic?
Lot. I think we need another podcast for it. But on a serious note, Christine, thank you very much for your question. It's a very important one. I think other people also appreciate it. It's really about, look, we can't change other people. I'd love to change your manager. I'd love to say, come, let me teach you. You can learn emotional intelligence, empathy. We can't do that. But what you can do is say, how do I deal with this situation? And I think strong boundaries. What are my boundaries on this? How often, ask yourself, how often does it affect me? How much do I listen to this individual? Is it crucial to my everyday success? And I think developing what I call, and I'm doing this here, if you see me, that is my inner shield. So asking really, how do I develop that inner shield? Then not everything perhaps gets through. But on the other hand, I also say there is a boundary for a reason. So if it's, of course, affects you every single day, very, very negatively, and then it's not a question of resilience, by the way. No? If you persistently for a long, long period of time be feeling sad, down, I'm a coach, I'm not a therapist, so that is a different topic. But do be aware of it. We're not suggesting that you have to be resilient and put up with everything. That's not what Nick and I here suggesting. So observe yourself. How much does it really affect me? And perhaps how could I develop those healthy boundaries? And also, how much do I listen to this person in that sense? I hope that's a little bit of a sort of quick answer there, but without knowing the context. Christine, if you wanted to reach out to me, perhaps privately on a message via Twitter or LinkedIn, feel free with the context, and I can give you perhaps a more specific answer.
Because it goes outside of that, the simplistic circles of control. Well, you can't control it, so don't let it bother you. When you're actually turning up every day and in that environment, that's not a healthy place to be, and it goes beyond the resilience. You're absolutely right. And do you know what? What a great observation. That Kristen just shared. It strengthened her resilience, I think, but it's interesting to reflect how their leadership impacts others. And we have, I will invite one of our tutors and another very experienced coach, Alison Rob Webb, onto a podcast with us later in the series. And she's got this great phrase, and Agnes, I'm sure this will resonate with you, is to consider what it's like to be on the other side of you and on the other side of your leadership. And whilst you might not be able to change the situation you're in or influence the situation you're in, when you go on to your next position, next role, you'll be much more present in terms of understanding what it's like being on the other side of you. And I think that's a great oppositional positioning tool, just to reflect on your own leadership in that way, particularly when you're in fast-paced, multi-dynamic jobs and lots of things going on and everything else. And I think that, one of the benefits of reading and engaging in things like tonight is you're starting to formulate your own leadership self and identity, and shape it into hopefully what you're going to manifest in your workplace is the leader that you want to be, and be much more considered and open to that.
Absolutely.
Okay, Agnes, we're coming up to the last 5 minutes. So rapid fire questions. Okay. Hold on one second. We just had another message. Just tried using the Gibbs reflective cycle. Big subs I find is making time. Yeah, time is an absolute issue. But if we go back to Agnes's point around making time for self, then go on, Agnes.
Yes, I'm saying yes, absolutely. However, we need to be realistic, and we need to, because realistic. So micro habits. Can I just say, if I can just quickly fire a few things at you, and then you take it, micro habits. Don't think I need an hour. You can achieve a lot in 2-3 minutes. Don't underestimate that. For example, when you finish work and you shut that laptop, because this became or switch off that desktop now, but this became our sort of life in Corona. Don't jump up and turn into mom, dad, or whatever, daughter, son, neighbor. That 2 minutes that you sit there in silence, just to sit back, relax, take a little distance, now physical distance from what you've been doing. That 2 minutes allows the brain to transition. The brain requires more time to transition that we've been running around. So that's critical as well. So even if that 2 minutes, 3 minutes between, the other thing that you can do, and it helps you to become, these are all help you to become more resilient as well, is to be more conscious of your movements. So for example, say, okay, this morning I'm going to be really conscious of my movements. You don't have to do this all the time. This is not an obsessive level, but to say, okay, I'm sitting here now talking to you. Okay, I'm moving my arm. You're gonna be much more considerate, slightly bit slower, and it allows again your brain to have that kind of peace. And what I can also say and encourage everybody is to every single day, do something in small doses, again, time, that you love. So, it has to be fine. You don't have to go out hours of running. You don't have to go. I love drumming. I play the drums. So, maybe I had 5 minutes before I came in here, just to get the adrenaline up, as it's normally my bedtime, to get me going. Do just small doses. It sends those positive hormones to your brain, and it has a much bigger impact. You will be surprised than you thought, because you think, what difference can 5 minutes, 2 minutes make? A huge difference if you do it on a regular basis. So don't ever underestimate that. Be kind to yourself. And as Ellen de Botton said, good half of the art of living is resilience. And I think between 2020 September and 2023 January, goodness me, I think it was not a half. So kudos to you all, and be very, very, very proud of yourselves, and appreciate also what you have achieved. Don't just look at what I haven't done and what was difficult.
Brilliant, thank you, and thank you for that. And Lisa, thank you for that recommendation, How to Have a Good Day by Caroline Webb.
Oh, I love that.
Again, taking you through how to reconcile the behaviour of others and manage that in and the impact that has on your own emotions. My last sort of thought, Agnes, and I've never asked you about the Stoics and Stoicism as an area of reading. I'm becoming very interested in Ryan Holiday's work, and he's got a podcast called I think it's the Daily Stoic, and he talks about ego is the enemy. It was his first book, and it just in terms of manifesting time for yourself there, and I haven't started this yet, but as I understand it, there's a Stoic reflection, and you have some time on that, and the podcast I think you can listen to daily, and there's a daily Stoic reflection, and it's just finding that mechanism for you, isn't it? And understanding, I think that we go right the way back to the beginning around self and knowing yourself and knowing your triggers, but just finding those moments where you can center, you can then refocus, and prepare yourself for what might be a challenging day, a difficult meeting, or whatever.
Absolutely. And I would say, don't wait. Don't make it a reactive exercise. So, for example, I meditate every morning. Now, you don't have to imagine me sitting hours umming around. I use Headspace and I do 5 or 10 minutes meditation. But I do it every single morning, realistically. And come on, that 5-10 minutes, I mean, we make time for it. It makes a huge difference. But I don't meditate when I'm stressed. Oh, I'm stressed, I'm not meditating. This is not this is not how the brain works. So I think we also have to appreciate that. And can I just say, we saw so much for our physical fitness, and we know we have to prepare, but we often talk about our mental fitness as in a reactive fashion. So if I can share with you just one wisdom today, is that be kind to yourself and respect yourself the same way as you respect others. Because I'm pretty sure you do and give a lot to others. So I think a little bit in microdoses every single day, just to generate those positive hormones, you absolutely deserve it. Trust me.
Brilliant. What a great way to finish. Finally, Agnes, thank you so much. It's just an absolute pleasure spending time with you. If colleagues want to find out more or reach out to you, where will they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. Also, not only reaching out, but if you follow me, I share lots. I also run a lot of there's a free masterclass coming out about this very topic actually on the 19th of January. So if you look on my LinkedIn profile, you can just sign up. It's not a resell, upsell. I don't use email addresses. I truly love to share to inspire. So please use the opportunity. I'm also on Twitter, and I think I've just posted the picture before to say I'm ready for tonight. So please do share and give us feedback there as well. And of course, I don't know if you want it. I mean, AC Power Coaching is my company, so you can just Google AC Power Coaching or my name, and I think you can find me. But reach out, because Nick knows, and hopefully others also, if they know me from the audience, I always respond. I do respond genuinely.
No, Agnes, well, listen, thank you so much. Absolute pleasure to share a conversation with you. And hopefully there's lots to think about for colleagues on live and colleagues listening to this on the recording. Well, happy Thursday in Bonn, and you and I need to catch up soon anyway, so we'll do that offline. But have a good evening, everybody, and have a great weekend when you get to it. And Agnes, once again, thank you very much indeed.
My absolute pleasure, and thank you everybody for listening. Thank you, Nick, for the invitation.
Pleasure.